So before we get into it, I just wanted to take a second and point out Maya on drums. That is an immensely difficult thing to do. And Maya, you do it so well. Thank you. So let's get into it. So obviously the service is a little different today, a lot different, and it's because it's Palm Sunday, and this is just one of those amazing times of year where we get to synchronize with the Bible, where the things that happen in the Bible, you know, the timeline, you never quite understand maybe how things are separated or not separated, but here it is. We are in sync right now to the minute. We are in sync with Jesus and what he's doing and going on, and our service reflects that. We have kind of a big, happy, powerful service in the beginning, and then we're going to quiet down because there are two things going on. This is the fork in the road. There's one direction and then there's another direction. There is a celebration and then there will be a death. And Jesus is coming into the festival. That is the Passover feast that everybody's coming together to do. This is the big time. They all go into the temple. They're going to sacrifice at the temple. They're going to go get a goat or whatever, you know, get with another family and then a couple families together get a goat. And they're going to sacrifice this goat, and they're going to remember the Exodus when the Israelites were by the force of God pulled out of Egypt and made their own people. And this Exodus story is called the Passover. It's an amazing story, and the Jewish people don't want to forget how God acted in their life, and so every year they commemorate it with a sacrifice. It's the festival. You know it's big when there's a "the" in front of it, right? It's not just a festival, it's the festival. And so many people are in Jerusalem, and they've all come to Jerusalem, and it's just swollen. It's to the gills. It cannot hold any more people. It's like spring break in Daytona, except less tequila and maybe more mourning. Yeah, maybe a little more lamb's blood. I'm not sure how much lamb's blood is in Daytona this time of year. As Jesus enters in, it's a party festival. He enters in on a donkey, which is a very interesting way to enter in because what he's doing when he does it is he's fulfilling prophecy. There were prophets that talked about how the Messiah will enter into Jerusalem on a donkey. And in the Old English is colt. A colt isn't what it means today. A colt in Old English just means a young donkey. And he comes in this way, and so what he's telling everybody in Jerusalem is, I'm the Messiah. It's huge. Because normally, what they would have expected the Messiah to come in on would have been a chariot, a war machine, something to conquer with. So it would be the difference between Jesus coming in on a tank versus Jesus coming in like maybe, say, a minivan. Nobody's looked at a minivan and go, that's a conquering machine. Although if you're a soccer mom, you conquer all kinds, so... The disciples are crazy excited about this. They cannot be held down. They have seen some stuff, these disciples. If you think about it, they've seen food appear out of nowhere and feed thousands and thousands of people. They've seen people just fawning over Jesus. He can't even breathe sometimes. They're packing in on him. They've seen demons call him by name and obey him and just, do whatever he says to do. They've seen people resurrected from the dead. They've heard God talk to him, and some few select disciples have even seen Elijah and Moses. These disciples have seen some crazy stuff, and now this Jesus guy that they've been following around with so long, he's going to fulfill the prophecy. He is the Messiah. What is going to happen next? So Judas knows what's going to happen next. He's seen enough. He knows that this Jesus isn't the Messiah. See, if Jesus was the Messiah, he wouldn't have come in on a donkey. He would have come in on a chariot. He would have been a general. He would have come in, and he would have chosen, of all the times to come into Jerusalem, this would have been the right time to come in. The leader of the Jewish people who are going to overthrow Rome and the Roman oppressors would have chosen this time to come in. It would have been the perfect time to come in, to strike, because the city is so full of people, Rome can't handle it. They're very well armed. They're very well trained. They actually have a lot of troops in Jerusalem because the Israelites are notorious for trying to overthrow the Roman government. But even now, with all of the advantages that Rome has, there are just too many people. You throw enough hamsters at anything, it will be taken down. So here we go. The Israelites are going to overthrow Rome, and man, this Jesus guy, he's going to be the leader. Except he went the other direction. He didn't come in on a chariot, he came in on a donkey. Donkeys aren't for war. Judas knows how God is supposed to act. He knows that God's going to overthrow Rome. That's what God is going to do. And so if this Jesus guy is going to be the Messiah like he says he is, then he has to start the chaos. He has to catch Romans with their pants down so that they can overrun the palace, so they can go in. Because God has already freed his people once at Passover with a force that wasn't going to be moved, the Egyptians, the great power of the world at that time. So here we are again with Roman power, the great power of the world, and God's going to do it again, and Judas just knows it, and Jesus isn't taking the opportunity. Judas is going to turn this imposter in. He had it in his mind before they even came into Jerusalem, but when they came into Jerusalem, they're going to have to do this Passover feast, this meal. And the disciples asked Jesus, hey, Jesus, where are we going to do this? I mean, we're not in Jerusalem. We're not from Jerusalem. We don't know where to set up all this stuff. We don't know where to get all this stuff. What are we going to do? Now, of course, Jesus, he's got it all worked out. He says, hey, look, you're going to find a guy, and he's going to get some water, and he's going to put it, and you're going to follow him. Follow that guy. And then that guy's going to walk, and he's going to go to the place, and then you guys can talk. Right? This is straight up like covert spy stuff going on. And Judas sees this, and he says, look, no, this can't be the Messiah. If this was the Messiah, why would he be hiding? Jesus is afraid. He's afraid of the priests. He's afraid of all of the powers that are in Jerusalem. He's afraid that if he comes in and he's not surrounded by all the people, as he did when he came in with the donkey, if he's just walking through the streets, that they're going to grab him and they're going to kill him. And that's not how the Messiah should act. If you're the Messiah, you shouldn't be afraid of anybody. You should be welcoming death. You should be begging them to bring it on. The Son of God isn't a scaredy cat. He should show himself in public and say, come at me, bro. Judas knows that following Jesus any longer would be a waste of his time, because this Jesus isn't God. Isn't how God would act. So Judas hopped on board right away. If you remember, like, there were the fishermen and the tax collectors, and there were some others, and they had to be called. Jesus had to come up to them. He had to say to them, hey, come, follow me. I'm the one you're looking for. Come follow me. Come and see. But Judas, he was on board. He's a zealot. A zealot is like paramilitary. Like, this guy practices war for fun. He's wanting it. He's looking for it. And he knows to be fitting the bill, so he followed him. And Judas was the best. I think we poo-poo Judas because of what he ultimately did. But we forget that this guy was the best. He was the number one disciple. He held the purse, which means whenever there were plans, Jesus would have to call him in. And they would talk about, hey, what we're going to do. Hey, we got some money. Somebody donated this, and it's going to go out to this, and you need to go buy this and plan these things. So all of the plans for the things that they were doing that Jesus had, they would have come through Judas. He would have been the go-to guy for all of the other disciples. They would have looked at him, and Judas would have been hardcore. He was a zealot. He was looking for trouble. So he wasn't afraid of anybody, which means the other disciples who were afraid of everybody would have looked to him to figure out how to act. Judas was hardcore in all of the ways that you want a disciple to be zealous for God. The problem is that Satan got into Judas's ear. That should give us all pause. If Judas is Jesus' right-hand man, if he's the number one disciple, I mean, think of all the stuff Judas has seen. And yet, Judas was able to turn a blind eye to all of that. I mean, if we saw even a tenth of what these disciples saw, I think our entire lives would be changed. But somehow Judas is able to see all of the things, to be witness to all of the things that Jesus has done and say, no, that's not how God acts. That's not who God is. That's not God. That's not what God is doing. And he tells himself these lies over and over. And the first thing is, whenever you hear or tell yourself that's not what God is going to do, or that's not how God acts, or God can't, that should be your first red flag. No, God can do whatever he can do. He will do whatever he will do, and there's nothing that we can tell God to do. But it's a testament to the power of our ability to go blind, to see what we want to see, and not what God is calling us to see. See, Judas wanted the Messiah to be a warrior. And when Jesus came in and he had another plan, Judas said, well, that's the greatest mistake of them all. I don't know what was going through his head, but what should have been going through his head was, wow, what's God up to? What's he doing now? I can't wait to see the amazing things that God can do because I've seen so much, and here comes something even better. But instead, what he was saying is, oh, wow, there was so much going on, and now I just got ruined. Judas wanted God to act because Judas wanted the glory. He wanted to be the general. He wanted to be the one that overthrew the Romans. He wanted the glory of leading the troops into the palace and committing all sorts of acts of violence so that afterwards they might sing songs about him. He couldn't see that God was up to something. How often do we do that? How often we say, no, God, you can't do it this way in my life. It has to be this way. How often we say, well, this is where God works and this is where I work, and sometimes they cross, but sometimes they don't. How often do we close our eyes to the miracles that God is providing to us all along? And then we put God on trial and say, hey, where are you in this thing over here? God is about to do something unexpected in Jerusalem. This unknown, unseen thing. And it starts right now. It goes through the weekend, and on this Thursday at 7 p.m., we're going to have the Last Supper. It's a party. This is a feast. Bring some wine. Bring a bottle of wine. I'm not joking. Bring a bottle of wine to share. Bring a glass. We don't have glasses here unless you like solo cups. And we're going to have an enjoyable time. We're going to celebrate this feast, this Last Supper with Jesus. And then come back on Friday as we commemorate his death. And so we know what the end result is. But at the time, that meant the death of the church. It wouldn't exist anymore. Jesus died. See, Jesus was right. Jesus died. The Messiah doesn't die. The Messiah kills. He isn't killed. God is about to do something truly miraculous. He's going to show his real power. But it takes a quiet mind to follow. Judas was the best of the best, and he couldn't quiet his mind. Maybe at least we can follow.